Okay, it's time to talk about skeletal muscle fibers. Ready? All right, here are standards and objectives. Pause it, peruse it. Skeletal muscles have unique features. We're going to start big and go small. So there's a dense connective tissue that connects skeletal muscle to bone, and that's called the tendon. Skeletal muscle itself, a voluntary muscle that produces movement, and again, it connects to bone with a tendon. Now, there's a layer of connective tissue, primarily collagen fibers, that surrounds the skeletal muscle, the epimysium. Epimysium. Okay, now within the skeletal muscle, we have bundles, and they are bundles of muscle fibers grouped together. And that bundle is called a fascicle. So you can see we have fascicle, 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 fascicle building together to make the skeletal muscle. So a fascicle, bundle of muscle fibers, and then we bundle the fascicles to make the skeletal muscle. And just like the skeletal muscle had the epimysium around it, the fascicle has connective tissue around it. And its connective tissue is called the perimysium. So the perimysium surrounds the fascicle. Now, within the perimysium, between those fascicles, we have passageway for blood vessels and nerves so that they can signal contraction and provide nutrients, take away waste, all those good things. Okay, so remember, we had the skeletal muscle attached with a tendon. Around the skeletal muscle, epimysium. In that skeletal muscle, we had bundles called fascicles. And the fascicles surrounded by perimysium, nerves, blood vessels running through there. Now, within the fascicle, we have muscle fibers. That's a cell. So a muscle cell is a unique shape. It's this long, kind of cylindrical shape. And a skeletal muscle cell or fiber has many nuclei, and they group together to form those fascicles. All right, so here you can see the muscle, the fascicle, the fiber. So the whole skeletal muscle, that's a fascicle, there's the fiber. Okay, skeletal muscle, fascicle, fiber. Okay, now there's a cell membrane that surrounds the muscle fiber cell. That's called the sarcolemma, okay, and that surrounds the muscle fiber. Okay, then around the sarcolemma, we have the endomysium connective tissue again. So look at this little illustration here. You can see this is a part of a muscle fiber, and then you can see the sarcolemma, and then around the sarcolemma, you can see the endomysium, and then you can see there's a lot of different nuclei that are evident. So that sarcolemma covers the muscle fiber and then the endomysium. Now, there are bundles of thick and thin filaments called myofilaments inside the muscle fiber cells. So they can be called myofibrils. So bundles of filaments. Each fiber itself, each muscle cell has hundreds to thousands of myofibrils inside. You can see right here, look at all these myofibrils inside a muscle fiber. So here's one muscle fiber. There's the sarcolemma. And inside that muscle fiber, we have all these myofibrils, bundles of thick and thin filaments. So the thin myofilaments are actin. Thick myofilaments are myosin. Maybe just remember myosin is the longer word, it's thicker. Actin is the shorter word, it's thinner. So here's what it looks like. Myosin has these heads that are going to bind to actin and they come up and slide, okay? So the functional unit of the muscle itself is called the sarcomere. And the actin and myosin, those myofilaments in the myofibrils overlap and they're organized into sarcomeres. Okay, so each myofibril contains about 10,000 sarcomeres. They just sarcomere, sarcomere, sarcomeres, they just repeat. Okay. Here's what a sarcomere looks like. And you can see the thick filaments, we have myosin, the thin filaments, we have actin, and there's the area where the actin fibers match up, and then the area where the myosin fibers match up. So the M line is where the myosin fibers from the thick filaments are joined. And then the Z line is where the thin myofilaments, the actin, are joined. So how does a muscle contraction work then? Well, there's the sliding filament theory. So myosin and actin filaments slide past one another. Those thick heads on the myosin bind to active sites on the thin or actin. The myosin head pivots toward the center, and then those Z bands are going to move closer and closer together. All right, so here's the myosin head. It is going to bind to the actin, and then you can see it is going to pivot, and as it pivots, it's going to create a movement. Then it needs some ATP to unbind it, and then the process can repeat. So you can see when it's relaxed how far apart the Z lines are, and then it moves closer together. All right, so like this. See those myosin heads binding, pivoting, unbinding, binding, pivoting, unbinding, creating the contraction. In class, we do a blue bit. But that's it. That's skeletal muscle fibers. I hope that you learned something new today.